Got to start this one over here. Good morning. So I titled this 3 Ways to Raise Your Thinking. And on some of the platforms, not on Instagram, I can't do a description on Instagram until I'm done, but I can just put a title on that. But the thoughts that I'm having about this is that, oftentimes we have lower thinking. And what I mean by that is thinking that is this direction, horizontal and out, and it's physical eye sight. Okay, what we see in the natural with our physical eyes. And, sometimes it's not awesome. It doesn't look hopeful. It doesn't feel like it's going to go somewhere good. Okay, so in light of that, how do we raise our thinking? Besides the, I think, well-known in the believing community, obvious answer, which is, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, getting in the Word, okay? Getting in the Word. I know it's hard to talk about these things because it's time required. No way to avoid having to spend time in it in order to grow and to become skilled in it, and all of that. So before we get well into this, because we're going to read some Bible verses, just a couple, and just kind of point to them, and it's just a brief overview. I'm going to go live in my group on Facebook and do a little more in-depth with these very thoughts. If you want to join in there, then you can get a little more about what we're talking about. Okay, so if you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe. It's probably over there somewhere button, and then hit the bell to get notified anytime we go live. I aim to go live daily, Monday through Friday. Sometimes, once in a while, that doesn't happen because life happens, and I appreciate your grace for that. But it is my aim and my, basically I'm just wanting to show up every day for you guys on this platform, on these platforms. So we all have grace for each other. That's super helpful. Okay, so in my group, we're talking about this week as the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, let's just call the elephant out. I'm wearing these glasses for blue light because I've been having so much trouble with my eyes. My eyes have been really feeling a lot of pressure and super tired. Like it's just a weird, almost like I have an ongoing headache. And so I ordered these off Amazon, and I'm giving them a try, and I'm hoping that this will fix that issue. Otherwise, I'm gonna go in and see what the eye doctor says. Okay, so 3 ways to raise our thinking and align it with God's higher thinking. That's the topic of this conversation. The first way that I would suggest is remember God will provide. Okay, remember we're talking about the Feast of Tabernacles, and it is a feast, to my understanding, that is to remember how God provided in the wilderness for the 40 years in between being delivered from slavery into coming into the promises of God. So when I look at that, I think, gosh, that's a big gap of waiting. But really, the people were not waiting. God was waiting. I believe that God, had the people's hearts been in the right place, God would have been taking them straight from slavery into the promises. But there was delay based on God's patience with the people to come to that place in their hearts and their minds to be able to receive the promise. Okay. That's just how I'm looking at it right now. with further study and thinking on that, I might think differently. But so remember, God will provide, even in the waiting period where he's waiting for us to come into that agreement and understanding that he has good things in store for us and that he delivered us because he delights in us and to take us into the promises of God. He's providing for us in that place. Well, remembering that God will provide is one of the ways that we can raise our thoughts up to his thoughts, because his thoughts are, he is the provider of all things, not just, I think when we think of provision, we think mostly about, physical things. But even in this moment in time for me, I'm thinking about the provision of your heart and the provision of your thinking and the provision of, just what we would deem as things that come up in our lives that we need or even wants. I mean, he's providing for us in this period of waiting, whilst you're waiting for the promises of God to be fulfilled. He is present. Back in Exodus, when they were in the wilderness, I mean, God is showing up. He's showing up as a pillar by day and a fire by night, and he's miraculously providing manna from heaven. So, I mean, God's providing, and we need to look for that provision is all I'm saying, and recognize it for what it is. I also, one of my favorite verses ever is Exodus 14:14. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. Okay, this is also when you're, maybe the things that God has delivered you out of are right on your tail and they're knocking at your door. All of this is the journey with the Lord, the deliverance, the wilderness of time between deliverance and promise is, distancing yourself from that place of captivity, that place of being bound. You're distancing yourself from that, and you're learning to trust God to provide for you rather than, oh, I'm feeling this so much. Lord, give me clarity and give the people listening clarity, Lord. That thing which held you captive and held you bound, okay? The Israelites were looking back at that, having come into this place where they didn't understand, they didn't know, and they're learning to trust God. And they're looking back going, it was better for us back there. In this place, we might die. Okay, so I'm getting a little in depth for this this live. I want to do this in my Facebook group. So I'm going to stop there on that one. Remember that God will provide. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is keep your eyes on the prize. You know that God has made promises, that there's promises coming to you. And I liken this second one. Let me just write this down really quick. I'm just making a couple notes so I don't forget what I'm thinking whilst I'm staying on track. Hope you don't mind, guys. We're just going to do this together. Okay. Okay, so and the second thing is to keep your eyes on the prize. Step out of the boat. Okay, when was it Peter stepped out of the boat, his eyes were stayed on Jesus. He stepped out and he's walking on the water, and then it's when he thinks about where he's at and what is he doing, and he looks down and he takes his eyes off of the prize and he begins to sink. Okay, taking your eyes off of the prize in that story is likened to doubt. I almost can't think of that word. In the story of the Israelites crossing the wilderness, it's like, they are looking back and they have to learn to trust that God's going to provide for them now in a place he did all this stuff, all the 10 plagues. They saw the hand of God. They had to cover their doorposts with blood so that one of the plagues would not touch their household, and God protected them then. It's like God has proven himself, and yet still finding themselves in the place of being uncomfortable. Oh man, this is hitting me in such different ways. Finding themselves in the place of being uncomfortable, their minds sink down to the lower thinking of the here and the now and forget what God has already done and what he said he will do. And in the middle of this place where they're in discomfort, it's not the norm, it's abnormal, it's unknown space. They're required to trust God. Again, keep your eyes on the prize. Don't lower your eyes. Don't lower your thinking to what you see here. Keep your thinking to what he said he will do. Keep your thinking on the promises of God and on the prize that's yet to come. Okay. On a grander scale, this is living in the time frame or living for eternity. Okay. But in the day to day, I would say, what has God said he's going to do with you? And then he's asking you to follow him into the unknown. This is where I'm at. That's why I'm like, whoa. Okay, God's asked me to follow him into this zone of public, conversation and display of my relationship with the Lord. And as I'm working through it myself, a lot of times coming to some understandings and inviting you into that process, it's the unknown zone, okay? But God has made promises. One of those things is I'm expecting him to encounter you as we're having these talks, okay? Keep your eyes on the prize. Okay, number 3, stay in his presence. How do you stay in his presence? Well, you make time for him. Okay, so how do you do the first 2 things? You actually stay in the presence of God. You keep talking to him about his promises. You keep asking him for reminders. You keep that relationship growing and active. And so, Lord, I ask that you would give Psalm 139 and Jeremiah 29 encounters today as people go about their day. And Lord, draw people's attention to yourself, Lord, to show them the areas even today in this day that you are making provisions for them, where they're at the current state of their thinking, at the current state of their being, at the current state of their heart postures, Lord, that you're making provision for them, even as they're working out, trusting you for the promises you've made. In Jesus' name. Okay, may the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine on you today, give you hope and peace as you keep your mind stayed on him. He will remind you that he's present. And Lord, give grace poured upon each person's lips for the conversations they especially have with themselves, so they have grace to pour out. And I will talk to you again soon. Jump in my Facebook group if you want to go deeper in some of these conversations and these topics. I'd love to have you. It's Godly, Wealthy, and Wise on Facebook. You can find that on Instagram in my bio, or you can find that in the description on all other platforms. Okay, guys, have a great, what is today? Thursday. Bye.